On what should have been a joyous and unforgettable day, my father's wrath shattered my dreams. As I stood at the altar, longing for his acceptance of my love for Lucas, he stormed toward me and struck me on the head with his shoe. Why choose a truck mechanic? He's a man of no worth. The shock in the room was evident, and chaos was just starting to brew. But then, something unexpected took place over the following hours. My name is Catherine Moore, and I never imagined that my wedding day would transform into a scene straight out of a nightmare. Standing here now, reflecting on everything that happened, I realized that the journey I embarked on wasn't just about love and happiness. It was also about resilience and striving for self-empowerment. It all started in the lively city of Seattle, Washington, where I had envisioned what I hoped would be the most beautiful day of my life. I had recently turned 28, and as a dedicated professor, I believed I had my life under control. I loved my job, where I motivated my students to reach their potential, just as I aspired to do myself. I had fallen deeply in love with Lucas, a 33-year-old truck mechanic whose hardworking spirit and gentle heart took my breath away. He was everything I had ever wished for, supportive, loving, and always present when I needed him. Our relationship flourished like the blooming flowers in the garden where we decided to hold our wedding. The sun beamed brilliantly that day, bathing the garden in a golden glow. I could sense the excitement in the air as my friends and family gathered to witness our vows. Yet, beneath the cheerful atmosphere, there was a tension that weighed heavily on my heart. My father, Mr. Moore, a successful businessman, was never fond of Lucas. He constantly expressed how he viewed Lucas's job as beneath my abilities. I would often hear him muttering about how mechanics lacked ambition, and I knew he believed Lucas was a poor influence on me. "Catherine, you deserve someone who can elevate your status, not someone who will bring you down," my father would say sternly. Despite his relentless disapproval, I chose to marry Lucas, hoping that my father would eventually come around. After all, love should be enough, right? But as I walked down the aisle in my white gown, I felt my father's gaze piercing through me, filled with disappointment and disapproval. My heart raced with anxiety, but I tried to set those emotions aside as I exchanged vows with Lucas. His eyes sparkled with joy. "I promise to love you, support you, and bring you happiness every day," he said, his voice steady and true. I felt a surge of hope as we sealed our commitment with a kiss, but little did I know that the real trials were yet to come. After the ceremony, the reception was lively with laughter, dancing, and the clinking of glasses, but the atmosphere remained thick with unease. I glanced over at my father, who stood apart from the celebrations, his arms crossed, his face set in a grimace. I tried to lighten the mood. "Dad, isn't this beautiful?" I said, forcing a smile. His response was a dismissive scoff. "It's just a show, Catherine. You deserve better than this." I sighed, trying to shake off the weight of his words. Lucas noticed the change in my demeanor and gently squeezed my hand under the table, silently offering his support. "Ignore him, Kathy. This is our day," he whispered warmly. But as the evening went on, the tension reached a boiling point. My father stood up to give a toast, and I hoped he would finally acknowledge Lucas and our love. Instead, his words cut like a blade. "I'm disappointed in this union," he began, his voice sharp and cold. "I don't see how marrying a truck mechanic can ever lead to a happy life for my daughter. You're settling, Catherine. I expect more from you." A collective gasp filled the room. My heart dropped, and heat flooded my cheeks as humiliation washed over me. I wanted to shout, to defend Lucas, but my voice was trapped in my throat. Lucas, however, stood his ground. "I love Catherine, and I'll always treat her with respect and love," he declared, his voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. "That's what truly matters." Mr. Moore snorted, dismissing Lucas's words. "Love? That's not enough to build a life on. You'll ruin her life, mark my words." I felt a surge of defiance. "Dad, please, this is our wedding day. I pleaded, trying to keep my voice calm. But before I could say another word, my father yanked off his shoe and brought it down on my head with a force I never expected. The room froze, shock gripping everyone in place. My scalp stung, not just from the physical pain, but from the sheer betrayal by my own father. Tears blurred my vision, and I felt the horrified stares of our guests. Lucas lunged forward, his face livid. "How dare you lay a hand on her?" he roared, his voice reverberating in the silent room. Fists flew, and chaos erupted as family members rushed to separate them. In that instant, it felt like my world was disintegrating. My mother hurried to my side, her eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, Catherine, I'm so sorry," she whispered, wrapping her arms around me, but her embrace felt like a frail consolation against the brewing storm. The sound of sirens sliced through the night as the police arrived, called by one of my aunts. They pulled my father away, his face twisted in rage as he spat curses. My heart ached as I watched our beautiful garden turn into a battlefield. What should have been a day of joy had turned into a nightmare. As the guests began to leave, murmuring words of comfort and confusion, I looked at Lucas, his lip bloodied, his eyes a storm of anger and sorrow. He enveloped me in a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry, Catherine. This isn't what I wanted for us," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. In that moment, I felt the pieces of my heart breaking and rearranging. I had hoped for acceptance, but instead, I had to face the harsh reality of my family. The wedding I had dreamt of had transformed into a nightmare, and I knew it was a turning point, one that would push me toward a new chapter of my life. I needed to stand up for myself, for Lucas, and for the future I deserved. This journey was just beginning. The morning after the wedding, I awoke feeling an overwhelming mix of emotions. The sun filtered through the window of our small apartment in Seattle, but its warmth seemed distant and cold. I could still feel the throbbing sting on my scalp where my father's shoe had struck me, a painful reminder of how quickly joy could descend into chaos. Lucas was already up, pacing the living room with a furrowed brow. "Catherine, we can't just let this go," he said firmly, concern shadowing his voice. I nodded silently, staring at my hands as they trembled slightly in my lap. I knew he was right, but the thought of confronting my father again filled me with dread. "What can we do, Lucas?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "He's my father. I've always longed for his approval." Lucas stopped pacing and knelt beside me, taking my hands gently in his. "Your father hid you at your own wedding. That's not love, Kathy. We have to stand up for ourselves, for you." His words struck a chord deep within me. I had always hoped for my father's acceptance, but it was becoming painfully clear that I could no longer wait for it. "You're right," I murmured, my voice gaining strength. "We need to take action." With newfound resolve, we began planning our next steps. Our first thought was to reach out to family members who had witnessed the chaos at the wedding. If we can get them on our side, it'll be harder for him to deny what happened, I suggested, my heart pounding at the idea of confronting the family dynamics that had kept me silent for so long. Over the next few days, I made calls to my Aunt Sheila, Uncle Robert, and Cousin Rebecca. To my surprise, many of them were more supportive than I had anticipated. Aunt Sheila's voice was filled with compassion when she said, "Catherine, we've all seen how your father can be. It's about time someone stood up to him." I felt a swell of courage as I realized I wasn't alone. With each conversation, I gathered more testimonies about my father's controlling and abusive behavior. My cousin Rebecca shared her own experience. "I've always felt intimidated around your dad. He has a way of making everyone feel small." With each story, the picture became clearer. My father's toxicity was not just a personal struggle. It had affected so many people in our family. It was time to break the cycle. One evening, Lucas and I sat together, poring over the notes I had taken during the conversations. "Do you think we should consider legal action?" Lucas asked, his tone serious. I hesitated, feeling a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. I want justice, I admitted softly, but I don't want this to drag on and consume our lives. The weight of the decision loomed heavy. Lucas looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. We'll do whatever you're comfortable with, Catherine, but he can't get away with this. After much discussion, we decided to meet with a lawyer. I found Mrs. Sanders through a recommendation from a friend. When we walked into her office, I felt a blend of nerves and hope. Mrs. Sanders greeted us with a kind smile. "I'm here to help you, Catherine," she said gently. "Tell me everything." As I recounted the events of my wedding day, I felt a surge of empowerment. Mrs. Sanders listened attentively, taking meticulous notes. "You have a strong case, especially with so many witnesses," she said confidently, her demeanor professional and reassuring. "But be prepared. This will become a public matter and could get ugly." I swallowed hard. "I understand," I replied, my heart racing. This was my chance to reclaim my life and set boundaries, not just for myself, but for everyone who had suffered under my father's control. In the following weeks, the whirlwind of planning and emotional turmoil became my new normal. I never imagined I'd be gathering evidence against my own father, but with Lucas by my side, I felt more determined. He was my rock, supporting me every step of the way. As we met with more family members, I began to see the bigger picture. Uncle Robert, usually the quiet one, opened up about his experiences. "Your father has always had a temper, Catherine. I wish I had spoken up sooner. It's time we ended this." With each story shared, my determination grew. This wasn't just about my wedding day. It was about breaking the cycle of abuse that had lingered for too long. One afternoon, I met Aunt Sheila at a local cafe. "You're doing the right thing, Catherine," she said over coffee. "You deserve to live without fear of your father. We'll support you, no matter what." Her words filled me with hope, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. As I left the cafe, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. I was ready to stand up for myself and reclaim my life. The path ahead would be difficult, but I knew I wasn't walking it alone. With Lucas and my supportive family by my side, I felt prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did I know, the confrontation with my father was looming closer, and the fight for my freedom was about to begin. As the days turned into weeks, the anticipation of confronting my father grew heavier on my heart. The path we were on was daunting, yet I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer the quiet daughter hoping for approval. I was a woman ready to reclaim her life. Lucas and I spent countless hours discussing our strategy, preparing for the inevitable showdown with my father. One evening, as we sat at our kitchen table, Lucas looked at me, concern etched on his face. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Catherine?" "Once we confront him, there's no turning back," he said softly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. "I know, Lucas, but I can't keep living in fear of him. This isn't just about me, it's about everyone he's hurt. I have to do this." The following week, we set up a meeting with my father at his office. As a businessman, he was used to being in control, and I knew that stepping into his domain would be challenging. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel strong and confident. As I looked in the mirror, I reminded myself that I was not just his daughter. I was a woman who deserved respect. When we arrived at Mr. Moore's office, the tension in the air was palpable. The walls were lined with awards and pictures of my father with influential figures, a stark reminder of the power he wielded. Lucas and I exchanged a glance, a silent affirmation of our commitment to face whatever was coming. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady as I entered the room. He looked up from his desk, surprise flashing across his face. The initial warmth I hoped for was replaced by an icy glare. "Catherine, what is this about?" he asked, his tone sharp. I took a deep breath and glanced at Lucas, who nodded encouragingly. "It's about what happened at my wedding. You can't treat people like that, especially your own daughter." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You chose to marry that mechanic. You brought shame on this family," he snapped, his voice rising. Shame? I love Lucas. You didn't even give him a chance. You chose to attack me instead. I replied, my heart racing but my resolve firm. Mr. Moore scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. You think you know better than me? You're just a child playing house. Anger bubbled inside me, but I refused to back down. No, Dad, I'm an adult, and it's time you recognize that your abusive behavior has hurt more than just me. I spoke to family members who witnessed your actions, and they're here to support me. Support you? He sneered, his face turning red. They're all just jealous of our family's success. I took a step closer, feeling courage surge through me. This isn't about success, it's about respect. You've bullied us for too long, and I won't stand for it anymore. I deserve to live my life without your control. Lucas moved beside me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Mr. Moore, Catherine has every right to stand up for herself. This isn't just about her, it's about breaking a cycle of abuse that has affected many in your family. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see my father's expression shifting from anger to disbelief. You think you can just walk away from this family? You think you can take me down? It's not about walking away, I said quietly but firmly. It's about breaking free from your toxic behavior. I'm pursuing legal action. You can't treat people this way and expect no consequences. His face twisted in rage, and for a moment, I feared he would lash out again. But instead, he seemed to deflate, the weight of our confrontation settling heavily on him. You wouldn't dare. I'd already have, I declared, my voice steady. And I'm not afraid of you anymore. In that moment, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I have faced my father, confronted his abusive behavior, and declared my independence. I had done it, not just for myself, but for everyone who had suffered under his reign. As we left his office, the weight of the world seemed to lift off my shoulders. Lucas wrapped his arms around me, and I felt safe. You did it, Catherine. You stood up to him, he said, pride shining in his eyes. Thank you for believing in me, I replied, my voice filled with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you. That day marked a turning point in my life. I realized that breaking free from my father's grip would not happen overnight, but I was ready for the fight. With Lucas by my side and the support of my family, I knew I could navigate the difficult road ahead. The journey was just beginning, and I was prepared to reclaim my life and my happiness. The weeks following my confrontation with my father were both empowering and exhausting. I had chosen to take a stand, but the weight of the decision lingered heavily on my shoulders. Lucas and I continued to gather evidence and testimonies from family members, and with each conversation, my resolve grew stronger. I could feel the tide beginning to turn, and it filled me with hope. One afternoon, as Lucas and I sat in our living room, surrounded by papers and notes, I received a call from Aunt Sheila. Catherine, I heard about your confrontation with your father, she said, her voice warm. I'm proud of you. We need to talk about how we can all support you through this. Her words meant the world to me. I had always admired Aunt Sheila for her strength, and knowing that I had her support gave me the courage to keep pushing forward. We arranged to meet with several family members who were willing to stand up against my father and support our case. When we gathered in Aunt Sheila's cozy living room, I could see the determination in everyone's eyes. They shared their own stories of how my father's behavior had affected their lives. It's time for a change, Uncle Robert said firmly. We can't let him think he can control us anymore. With this newfound support, we met with Mrs. Sanders again to discuss the next steps in our legal battle. You have a strong case, she reassured me, her demeanor professional yet compassionate. But be prepared for resistance. Your father will fight back. I nodded, my heart pounding at the thought of the upcoming battle. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady. I want to hold him accountable. As we moved forward with the case, I found strength in the support of my family and Lucas. We documented everything: testimonies, instances of my father's abusive behavior, and the impact it had on our lives. It was a long and painful process, but with each step, I felt myself healing. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. I had imagined this moment countless times, and now it was finally here. As I entered the courtroom, I felt Lucas's reassuring hand on my back. "You've got this, Catherine. No matter what happens, I'm here for you," he whispered. As the proceedings began, I faced my father across the room. His demeanor was calm, but I could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. I took a deep breath and focused on the truth I was there to share. Mrs. Sanders presented our case with clarity and conviction, and I found the strength to speak. "This isn't just about what happened at my wedding," I began, my voice strong. "It's about years of emotional and physical abuse that have gone unchallenged." I refused to be silent any longer. My heart raced as I spoke, but I could feel the support of my family surrounding me, fueling my determination. I shared my story, my father's outburst, and the impact it had on my life. I could see the judge nodding, and it gave me hope. The tension in the room was palpable as my father attempted to downplay his actions, but his words fell flat. The testimonies from my family painted a vivid picture of the reality I had lived. They spoke of fear, manipulation, and the emotional scars that had lingered for years. Finally, the judge spoke. "It is clear that there's been a pattern of abusive behavior in this family, and it is time to break that cycle." Tears of relief filled my eyes as the judge ruled in our favor. I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation wash over me. I had stood up against my father and reclaimed my voice. After the hearing, I embraced Lucas, tears streaming down my face. "We did it," I exclaimed, feeling the weight of years of fear and pain lifting from my shoulders. In the days that followed, I chose to focus on healing and rebuilding my life. With Lucas by my side, we explored new adventures together, helping others who had faced similar struggles. We found joy in community service and creating safe spaces for those in need. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that I had not only broken free from my father's grip, but I had also found my own strength and resilience. My story was one of empowerment, a testament to the human spirit's ability to rise above adversity. I was finally living for myself, and I embraced the future with open arms.